Hey, what's happening everyone? Pragmatic Addict here. So tonight we are talking about the millionth film titled Silent Night. Man, it is good to be back in a theater after like a week drought. It's not that long, it's a week. But for someone that goes to the theaters generally like 3 times a week, it just felt nice. This is like my 6th tea swizzle cup. Now, I was very interested in this movie, which says a lot because I'm not an action fan, but also Godzilla Minus One comes out this weekend. I saw this one. Now, this film is titled Silent Night, in this film's case, because it is a more, I wouldn't say it's a silent film, but it is a no dialogue film. And while that was the main thing that sold me on this movie, it is also worth noting that this is the first American film from this director in over like 20 years. And I'm gonna say, again, I'm not an action film, but I didn't even know that this was like a silent film. When I first saw this trailer at whatever movie it was that I saw it in the theater, I was like, it just looks like a fine enough action film. It didn't dawn on me till after, and I was reading something about it where I was like, wait a minute, there's no dialogue in that? And then I rewatched the trailer and I was like, oh shit, there's no dialogue in this. It just looks like a fine action movie. But with this being the film to break that 20-year streak, I was really curious as to like what this film was gonna bring. So without further ado, guys, let's talk about Silent Night. Now, I am going to first off state the obvious, but also something that kind of caught me pretty immediately, which is weirdly enough, the sound design. So obviously with a film with no dialogue, you're gonna have to get creative, you would think, with, you know, various sounds. And from an action movie, I was expecting that to mainly be, you know, gunshots, car sequences, people screaming, explosions. And it is that, but just the way that this film incorporates sound design in general, it really does help viewers keep attached to the movie without having to blatantly, like, tell a story with, like, genuine words or, you know, with just, like, actions. Certain things are amplified more than others that all play a factor into telling this story, which I thought was a really solid way and creative way and proper way of doing a movie like this. But unfortunately, this is a film that is not the best with keeping a solid streak. As fun and as different as this movie sounds, it is also equally challenging. You're limiting what you're able to do with a movie like this. And you would think that, you know, making a movie like this and breaking that 20-year like streak or whatever, that you would kind of have an idea and a plan to know what to do and know how to do it. And I think for the most part, director John Woo does the best with the action sequences and not necessarily like enough to make you engage or like to paint enough of a picture all the time with where the movie is going. Our main character is extremely fun to watch. And also, the actor that is playing him, I can't think of his name from the top of my head, but he does so well with delivering to emotions, responding well to an emotional factor. Also, his character arc is natural, it's believable, it's got enough effectiveness to it with its escalation at times, with the subject matter that we see in, for example, like flashbacks that are kind of keeping us engaged to both this character and also keeping us attached enough to the story as it goes along. Which, going back to the action sequences, this was to be expected. I mean, you know, there are gunshots, explosions, car chases, screaming, fun death, stunts, all stuff that we had expected. And that is also the easiest thing, I think, to tackle in a dialogueless action film. But in between these action sequences, I wouldn't even say like in between, because the movie does admittedly take a while to really deliver on the action spectacle that I was anticipating it would be, but leading up to that and like in between the instances of like background and flashback material that were able to kind of like get enough of an idea for this character's arc and why he's going on the journey he is in this movie, it does feel very undercooked. And another thing that I wouldn't even say just with this thing specifically, but just in general, the movie does like to linger on things for an excessive amount of time. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it works at first and then to its detriment, and then sometimes it just fucking drags. And another thing going further into this is that one of the duller parts of the movie, like that slow portion that I've been talking about that doesn't really work the best. If anything, it's the weaker part of the film. It does start very early on, and I was, reasoning with it to an extent. I'm like, I'm sure this isn't the easiest film to tackle, but I was also mindful of the shorter runtime. I was also mindful of the things that I was most excited for and anticipating and wanting out of this film going into it, and it was just honestly not giving me enough. I mean, the plot centering like behind the guy, why he doesn't talk, and like what's going on, it makes sense, it does its thing, and it's fine enough, but I just don't think it should have been taken as seriously as it was. I don't think it needed to spend so much time on something unless it was really gonna flesh it out and really give us something that was going to keep us attached for those long portions. And another thing is that I just wish that this film took more advantage and leaned in more to like how over the top and ridiculous and fun it could have gotten, and what it could have been as far as the kind of like idea I was seeing this film going into it. I'm like, wow, a no dialogue action spectacle from a director that hasn't made an American film in 20 years. This has got to pack a fucking punch, and it's got to be memorable and an absolute event. But there are times where, during like the film, or while we're waiting for those action sequences to come up, the film does really get creative at times with, limiting itself to the type of movie it is, where it's getting creative with its sound design. And one thing most notably is that there's like a montage scene of sorts where it kind of feels like the big like moment where the movie's gonna really get going, where it feels like the introduction to the, exciting chapter where this movie is gonna start getting the most fun. And it does really well with its sound design. And it just seems like an aspect that is necessary if in a film like this, if it's not gonna, be an action-based sequence. But now, touching on something, going back to how a movie like this is challenging, this leans more into like how the character doesn't talk. There are some things that happen that, it kind of does lean into that, like, getting the film going where, it's like a montage of sorts. He's training, he's doing certain things, prepping up, building his character arc, and it just doesn't seem like as believable or as achievable as it would be, like, if this person were able to use dialogue, and it kind of pulls you away from what this scene could be. But something else now that I want to talk about, which I had known that this film was going to be a revenge film as much as an action film, but I didn't lean into that as hardcore because I didn't know how much it was going to stand out. But it is actually, at times, maybe stronger than the action in this movie. And believe me, when the action hits, like when it comes, it's worth it. But as a revenge story and a revenge character arc, it is really solid with that. As far as like the genres and the tones it wants to tackle, this movie does a very good job with. And I like that, the movie doesn't hold back on its story. You really feel, and the movie spends time on reflection and the journey and the pain that our main character is going through. And going even further into our main character, it actually got to the point where I had a sinking feeling and I was just worried about, what could happen to this character with how much detail we're getting in his backstory. And, I didn't want this to end bad for him. And again, just going into the actor performing as this character, his role, he does so well with, again, leaning into emotion. He doesn't overdo anything. He feels genuinely like a normal human being that has just gone through something traumatic, wants vengeance, and is going to very drastic measures to get that revenge. But also, on a realistic note, I will say, like, as an action spectacle and as an ordinary man, there's a lot of times where I just didn't buy it. Like, the action was good. Don't get me wrong. Like, as an action film, you are getting what you want when the action comes. But there are times where I was watching this film and I'm like, there's no fucking way this guy not only wouldn't be standing, but is not even getting majorly or just hurt in general at certain times. Like, this guy's not fucking John Wick. This guy's not Liam Neeson. How is this guy standing at times? So again, there are a lot of times where, it delivers on action, but there's also like a lot of it that, as entertaining as it is, realistically, you do have to just kind of accept it. Also, Scott Mescudi, Kid Cudi, I didn't even know that he was in this film. I saw it on the cast when I was going into this movie, and look, don't get me wrong, I love Scott Mescudi. I am all for him as Jackson in X. I think that he's just a fantastic actor, and seeing that he was going to be in this movie at last minute was another thing I was very excited about. But goddamn, They didn't give him anything to do in this movie. There were times where he would come in for like a couple seconds at a time, leave for 20 minutes, come back another few seconds, leave for another 15, and it was either like that, or if he was on screen doing something, it was just in the most dumbest scenarios. So I just think that his character just really got wasted. Also, the ending I am very disappointed with. It ends on like a very straightforward, underwhelming note where it's like, this is ending. This is your generic ending. This is kind of what you could expect in the most like bare minimum way, where it just kind of feels abrupt. It doesn't feel like climatic. It doesn't feel earned. It doesn't leave you with anything to take afterward. You're just kind of like, oh, I mean, yeah, I guess so. I guess we can end the movie. So overall, guys, when it comes to Silent Night, when it came to the most important things and the things I wanted the most, it did very well with. If you like go into this film just kind of like as an action film, just wanting to be entertained by its premise and its idea. But a lot of other things were either underwhelming, just very questionable, and just didn't land at all. And overall, guys, I'm feeling more strongly mixed on this film than anything. So guys, that is going to do it for my review on Silent Night. I do have to see Godzilla Minus One still. I had an early screening to go to a couple days ago, but I had a lot of things going on. I had some family over, and then I ended up not feeling so well. And then, what ended up happening after that? I think, oh yeah, we got a trailer for Night Swim, so I was like, okay, well, with a pretty overstimulating day, I'm just gonna react to the Night Swim trailer. So I do still gotta see that movie, but as far as this film, I do think it is worth a watch if you're going into this film expecting the things that general audience will be. But with all that being said, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.